Welcome. My name is Schmitt. Just a little bit about me. I run a lot of conferences, most of them online. One of them is the CSS Summit, which is an online, sorry about that, online conference dedicated to CSS. It's 3 days, different track each day. We have over 20 speakers this year. It's our 5th year of doing the CSS Summit. So if you're interested in CSS, definitely check it out. It's great it's online, it's no travel hassle. If you like to travel, we also do CSS DevConf, which is going to be in October at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, right next to the Rocky Mountains. So definitely check that out. I write a lot of books. I've written CSS Cookbook, so I'm a big CSS nerd, if you can't tell by now. But I have a copy to give away today, design web and mobile graphics. We go from, the chapter starts from like HTML basics to all the way up to adaptive images towards the end. So definitely check it out if you're interested. I give out a book like this one for great questions that I can answer. So there's a logo. But I also co-host a podcast, Not Breaking Space. It's at notbreakingspace.tv. So we interview people in the industry. So definitely check it out. It's totally free, as most podcasts are. But I want to talk to you today about what the iPad represents now. If you have an iPad, from iPad 3 and on, you have to think about designing for it, and one of the things you design for is the speed in which your images get delivered, right? So you have to determine, like, an iPad can be on a great Wi-Fi network, or it could be on a 3G network, barely getting by. And if you have a really great, intense, image-intensive experience, it's gonna be hard for users to download that on a 3G network. Also, to think about the iPad kind of represents thinking about the size of the image, the layout of the web page, because you can do landscape and landscape and portrait. But also, how many people here design their websites for a 60-inch HD TV? Right, 1% over there. All right. People are actually building websites. You actually build your websites for a 60-inch HD TV. So how do you design a really rich website experience for that? So you have to deliver really awesome images and have a great layout that kind of adapts to all that stuff. And then also the actual image quality of the size, the actual image quality of the monitor, right? So now we have to deal with Retina or HD quality. So these are 3 things that we have to deal with when actually delivering an image to a user. And these are 3 things that are kind of separate, and just knowing one doesn't give you the full picture. And so one thing I thought about when I started thinking about adaptive images was, why don't we just ask the browser, right? We're just like, hey, the browser knows what's going on, so why don't we just say what's going on? And in fact, you can, like in the early days, you actually say, like, there's a piece of JavaScript that says, like, hey, who are you? It's a navigator.userAgent. And you get this nice little piece of string feedback that says, hey, this is who I am. It's pretty awesome. And when it was first used, it was great, because like here, you'd say, like, hey, who are you? And the browser would say, hey, is there something wrong? Scratching? What's the scratching? It's a red shirt. Is that it? Is that good? Okay, cool. I thought people were liking the scratching. So, gotcha. All right. So in the early days, you actually say, like, hey, what browser are you? And you can say, like, hey, who are you? And they would say, like, hey, I'm Mozilla. I'm pretty awesome. I'm on the Windows 3.1 platform OS. Like, everyone should be doing it. It's like the latest and greatest. And then some other companies got into the business of saying, hey, I want to make a browser too, but I don't want to be locked out from blocking people out. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm totes Mozilla as well, right? So, bless you, sir. And so I'm totally Mozilla. And then it's got kind of crazy, because if you go to another browser, another company's got into the browser market and say, like, hey, I'm totes Mozilla. I'm also WebKit. I'm also Gecko. But I'm also really Safari too. So it gets kind of crazy when you're trying to, like, say, hey, who are you, and deliver it back to and try to use that as a way to, like, deliver determine like what's going on with the browser. So what's happening is that these browsers are saying like, we're actually delivering the same features, but we're being kind of limited by people kind of detecting us by browsers. And so if the browser vendors themselves are having trouble with it, what we need to do is not think about like browsers, but actually look at what's called feature testing, and actually look for all those three things that we just talked about with delivering images to users. And so the first one's pretty easy, browser width. It's been around for a while, so you have a vanilla JavaScript way of just determining the width and height of a browser. You also do jQuery to determine that as well. Also, we have like CSS Media Queries, right? We actually say like, we can't detect, but we can say like, we can deliver stuff for it and say like, hey, if you're this size window, we can totally deliver it for you, right? And that's great and everything like that, but that only gives us, the frame of the browser window. It doesn't give us like what's actually happening in the canvas, right? And so that details like what's happening with the screen resolution. And so, that's a whole different thing, because screen resolution, like it's kind of this white lie we've been telling ourselves for the last 20 years about screens. Is that we've been saving our images to 72 ppi, and which is great. We've been doing that. We just assume every desktop monitor can handle that. And actually Macs, where it came from was Apple just said, hey, 72 points per inch equals 72 pixels per inch. This is really awesome. And then some other companies said like, well, we want to be different. And so they're actually 96 ppi back then. And actually, to their credit, they actually went with 96 ppi because smaller fonts are more legible from a desktop experience. So they actually were like trying to be a little bit more. They had some user in mind when they actually made that decision. But now we actually have what's called Retina Displays from Apple. And this slide here, so you can see at the top portion, this is an iPhone 3G monitor display. And then below it is the screen of a Retina display phone. So you can see it's like they're packing about 4 pixels, about almost the same space as 1 pixels before it. So, and Retina means different things depending on which device you're looking at. But the the actual technical specs different, change from iPhone to iPad. And so Retina basically just means it looks like a piece of paper, like a really nice printed piece of paper, no matter if you're holding it from an iPad or iPhone or from your MacBook or whatnot. So this is really great. So you can see this, a lot more information is being packed in, and so you get really crisp, clear fonts. And for the first time, since when Retina iPad came out, I could actually read for a long time on an iPad and just enjoy the experience. So before Retinas came out. So, and it's not just an Apple problem. HD is coming to Intel products, Windows products throughout this whole year. So they're starting out this whole year. They're just coming out with them. So it's going to be quite an experience. So what we could do is actually just try to like serve up images that's to these displays. And so if you actually take a 72 ppi image and you actually say, hey, just take the same amount of real estate as you would for an HD experience, that it would actually be a really small type of image because all this number of pixels that we had to take. And then if you try to expand it to blow it up to the same amount of real estate, you get a nice blurry type of image, which is, well, I say nice, but not being sarcastic about it, but just a blurry image. Whereas if you took an image that was HD compliant, if you will, and covered this large amount of space, and then you shrunk it down, now there's enough image detail in there that the browser can generally do a really good job of resizing the image and stuff like that. So what happens is that you have this one image, but then you're actually taking up almost 4 times the amount of file size than you would have to do just to have an HD-friendly image. So what's happening is that you actually have larger images, which means larger file sizes, right? So, and if you think about like so that gets into a whole like bandwidth problem, right? And so to deal with bandwidth, you need to do a feature test, determine the speed of the user and how fast they're coming at you at their site. And I'm not a big fan of speed tests because in order to do a speed test is that you have to send a piece of known quantity information, like a file size, like this image is X amount of K, down to the user and then test how fast it gets there. And so I don't like that because, and I was talking to someone, I was talking to Tab Atkins at Google and said, like, testing for speed on internet connection is like stepping in front of a car just to see how fast it's going, right? And then Tab was like, this is one of the reasons why Tab works at Google and I don't, is he says, like, Christopher, you only have to test it once. And then, I was like, okay, cool. But and so it's all speed tests, like I was saying, like it's just you send a known quantity. Like in this test, they send a 50K image down to the user, and then just this test to see how fast that goes. And so for me, you can do a lot of damage. Like in terms of damage, I mean like create a really quality user experience with 50K, right? You can do a lot of good with that. You can do like have a great CSS file that's really optimized. You do a whole lot, you compress images. You can do a whole lot like cool things with 50K, and just to send like an image that's 50K on top of everything, it just seems like a little bit too much work. Thankfully, there is a native test to test to determine the speed of a connection. However, so you actually use like navigator.connection. However, it only works in Android 2.2 and higher. So, and so this kind of test is actually baked into Modernizer, which is a. How many people do not know about Modernizer? Okay. For the handful of people who don't know about it, just definitely check it out. Your main takeaway for today is to go Google Modernizer and look into it. But basically, it's a suite of feature detection tests, and you actually like determine which test you need to do it. And if there's a fail in your detection test, you can actually do like a yes, no, or deliver the right patch or polyfill to the user. So this is something that you can do with Android. It's pretty nice, but it's hopefully it'll drop in Safari Mobile, but I'm not sure when it's going to do that. So there's some solutions that we can try to do to deliver the right image to the right user depending on speed, bandwidth, sizes, and whatnot. So one of them I call just HD access, and this is like kind of the first attempt at trying to solve this problem. It was by the Filament group, and so what they would do is just check a URL string, but first they have to write to HD access, do some mod rewrite. And so what they do is say, hey, if you get some sample content here, just give them the small image first, and then just if you determine through some JavaScript that we place up here that the screen is actually larger, then just swap out with this full size image right here, and just do it that way. The problem with that solution was that it didn't really think about HD or Retina displays at all, and so that was not really a great solution. And so another solution is called Adaptive Images, and it's a kind of good service in that is that you can actually deliver appropriate sized images depending on the size screen that the user has. But you have to install HD Access, JS, PHP5, have a graphics library, and then you have an image element. And so what's happening is that you have to ping the server's got to do a whole lot of work, and then deliver the right image. And also you have to have HD access and do JavaScript and stuff like that. So it's a little kind of convoluted. Just if you compare it, just making an image and then putting it to a web page. So which I think is the golden standard we've been living by for 20 plus years now. Another solution by people from Filament Group and also responsive web design image community. And yes, I did say the words responsive image design community. There's such a thing. So picture element and a source set image attribute. It's based off of the video HTML element out in HTML5, and so with video element, you actually put in media queries inside your HTML and dictate which video you want to play to the user. And so the kind of picture solution is and this is the JavaScript patch because picture element hasn't been embedded into a mainstream browser yet, I believe. So you have to use a polyfill, which is sort of based on this, is that you do picture element and then do JavaScript to the source your images. So you do small, you can do medium size with media queries, large, and large, and you have a fallback in case the browser doesn't support JavaScript, and just use put your image into no script. So that's pretty good. I'm not a big fan of this just because I don't feel like putting images behind no script. I think that's kind of weird. But basically, it's a if-else HTML. Uses JavaScript and borrows a lot from video element, and then you get your image, stuff like that. So based off the same idea, but a little bit more compact in coding, is the source set attribute. And this was actually proposed by, I think, someone from Apple in the W3 community. And then basically it's source set. You can just do banner HD, do Retina right there, and then comma. Or if it's less than 100 pixels wide, just put banner phone. But if it's less than 100 pixel wide and it's Retina, just put the banner phone HD JPEG inside. So it's kind of a compact version of, I think, of a picture. But both aren't in browsers yet. But these are solutions that are being proposed and knocked around right now. I actually came up with a jQuery plugin with a couple of other smart people who know JavaScript better than I do. So yeah, you just have jQuery. It's called HiSource, and so you just call the function right there. And you just do, hey, just put your mobile-friendly version image right there as your image source, and then there's a whole series of tests that go through, do data 1 for if it's a regular desktop image, or do a Retina if you want to swap it out. And so it does all these kind of cool swappings. But it also does a little bit, there's another solution for image resizing is that we actually use CSS Media Queries. And actually what we can do is use a single pixel GIF and basically swap out a mobile-friendly first image and then have the image slide in through the single pixel GIF as through a background image and have it as a window. So that's one way of doing it, if you want to do that way. So you have actually like an asset single pixel GIF if you want to, or you actually do data URI if you want to. But this is one solution of many. I actually worked with Chris Coyer to document all the images, all the responsive images techniques that were out there. At the time, we wrote this about 2012. There was over like 24 solutions for this. And when you have 24 solutions for this one image problem, we know there's a big issue going on. So I just talked about my solution, but definitely go check out Chris Coyer's blog post about it in terms of where he talks about it. And in his blog post, he talks about like if you're okay having a server-based solution, definitely check out these types of workarounds. If you just want a purely JavaScript solution, just check out these solutions. So he really does a great job of doing them block by block. But let's say like we don't want to deal with any workarounds. Maybe there's some ways we can just not have to deal with delivering raster like images. One technique is pretty cool is background size 100% kind of CSS. And what I like about this website, this is a site for FitTextJS, and this is a great responsive web design jQuery plugin, is that when you resize your browser large and small, that the headings would start wrapping underneath each other at the same size. So what happens, this plugin actually will keep the aspect ratio of your heading and actually scale the font size of your heading depending on the size of the browser. So that's a really good solution. However, when I checked out the site, I really liked this arrow, because this arrow would just shrink and expand depending on what the size of the browser was. And so, but it was all text-based. And so what happens is that they actually just put the image of the arrow in the background of the parent of the link and have set the background size 100%. And so it would actually scale automatically. So it's not a great solution for everything, but just if you're thinking about like scaling images and doing something like that, this might be a solution for you. Another solution is just use SVG. SVG's come a long way, and there's actually modern support for browsers. Compared to raster images like JPEG and PNG, the image information is actually it's math. It's all these anchor points, Bezier curves in there. So you actually scale the image without losing any quality, and it's totally native. So you just do image file name.svg, and you're ready to go. So it's awesome. And sometimes, depending on the image, file type, the actual SVG file might be actually lower in file size than a PNG. Sometimes that's not the case, especially if you get a little bit more complex image information. So there's actually online tools for helping you to compress SVG, and just know for a fact that out of the box, Adobe Illustrator, when you export to SVG, will not give you a great optimized SVG. So definitely use a tool like an optimizer to do that. So another technique with SVG, and this is one that I'm really excited about, is called the ClownCar technique. And so what happens is that you just do an SVG, which again has modern browser support. And with SVG, you actually list styles within an SVG, just normal like CSS styles, and say, hey, I want a background, and determine like, hey, for this image, for this browser size window, deliver this image right here. If it's between 400, let's say it's between 400 pixels and 700 pixels, deliver a medium image. If you want a big image between 700 to 1,000, go here. If I'm designing for a 60-inch HD TV, deliver a huge image. And so it's really cool. And because it's being used, the images are being delivered through the background image property, you only get a one HTTP request hit. So where a lot of the problems with the JavaScript solutions, what happens is, like, especially the high source one I made, and other ones like it, is that you first have to throw down a mobile-friendly version of the image, and if the user is on a high speed or Retina display, you have to swap out that image, right? So the user actually has to download 2 images to get one image experience. What's really cool with this ClownCar technique is that it's only one image that gets downloaded. So it's probably the best one. For more of a breakdown of how it works, Estelle wrote an article on Smashing Magazine, and it's called ClownCar Techniques, and just Google that and pull it up. So with Monetizer, you actually determine if your browser, if you support older versions of IE, for example, you actually do a feature test for SVG and swap out SVG for a ping if you want to. So that's pretty. And then another workaround is the font-based solutions. And one font-based solution is to just use Unicode characters. And Unicode characters are the characters that you can just do copy and paste and just put them wherever you want to on the home page. And you put Unicode characters in a tweet. You can put them in a browser, and, whatever. And so, like, one of them here is like, you just put like a note icon right there or a telephone icon. The problem with this type of solution, if you want to just do like icons, is that screen readers won't read them very well. At the best case scenario, a screen reader will just say Unicode character, blah, 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 like whatever the number is. At the worst case scenario, the screen reader will just say a whole bunch of like garbage numbers and question marks and alphabet. No, it won't even know what's going on. So in terms of accessibility, I wouldn't recommend this as a solution until the screen readers get better. Another solution that's been proposed is a kind of font-based in terms of designing for responsive web design, is that we can actually deliver different fonts within a typeface. So if you're in a small screen, you can actually deliver a thin font, or you can actually deliver if you have a wide screen, you can deliver a wide block letter font family. I'm not really a big fan of this solution, is because embedding font files are really large files, right? If I'm sweating 50K, for that 50K speed test, I'm really worried because font families are really large files, and so maybe this is great for if you can detect the screen is wide enough, and maybe you can assume that the speed for the users is fast enough. You can deliver different types of font family solutions. So, but yeah. Another solution is they actually use icon fonts, and Chris Coyer again, he loves icon fonts, and because icon fonts are pieces of type, you can change the color. You can do drop shadows. You can do all the CSS cool effects you can with type. You apply them to icon fonts. Again, the issue with icon fonts is the same thing with any font that you embed on a web page. They're really huge files, right? So when you want to embed them, you want to make sure that you use the icons that you really need. And so there's a couple services that actually do that. One is Fontello.com. So you actually go to Fontello.com and just say, hey, I want these icons. I want this one, I want that one. And then I'll actually download a web font for you that just contains those characters. And you can actually just embed that font file, and then you can pull it up. Another one that's popular is iconmoon.io. And it does pretty much the same thing. It has a little bit more feature support in there. But the key thing, though, when you use an icon font is to use this type of solution right here for your CSS and your HTML. So when you want to include an icon, use a span tag right here, an empty span tag. Do data icon equals the letter or number or whatever key that you want to use to call up the icon font. So if you're if your cloud icon is the letter C, for example, in this example, just a capital C, make sure you put it right here. And then do content generation, do attribute.data icon. So what happens is the browser comes, says like, okay, you want me to generate content? I'll just pull out the letter C and put it right here before the span tag. And oh, you want the icon font family, so I'll just apply the icon font right there into a nice image of a cloud. So what you want to do is actually then make sure you have area hidden true, and so that screen readers now are supposed to speak automated generated content from CSS now. So if without this, the browser will just read off the letter C. It won't know that it's an icon font for cloud. It will just read the letter C. So it will just say C save to cloud, and so like that's not what you want to say. So you want to use this type of setup when you're setting up icon fonts. Another solution I like personally is compressed JPEGs. I love this solution so much. So let's say you're in Photoshop and you want to scale an image, let's say like this image right here. You can see this image right here, it's kind of pixelated, right? And you want to scale it. So there's something in Photoshop, you go to Photoshop, called, when you want to scale, go to nearest neighbor. You go to nearest neighbor, Photoshop is very polite to your image. It will scan it, it will resize it, and it will only scale into like a 1-to-1 ratio. And once you're done resizing it in a large way, it will actually make it like pixelated still, but this source image is actually still pixelated, which is what we wanted. If you actually go to Photoshop and say, hey, do nearest neighbor, and kind of like, I'm actually stretching it, I don't have image information like kind of baked into it like an SVG file. So please do your best to like smooth things out. And so when you tell Photoshop to do that, it gets kind of blurry. It doesn't really look pretty good, pretty well. So but it's doing its best job because that's what you told it to do. And so what we want to do is try to like leverage this technique, but in reverse, and let the browser do a lot of heavy lifting. So we take this image and just like focus in on the pixels. That nearest neighbor type of effect, it would just take, hey, it'll look up, look down, look to the right, to the left, and say like, okay, if I'm going to scale down, let me just try to like average the colors and whatever, and just only these colors, and just look very focused on these colors and just squeeze them. With kind of the nearest neighbor kind of approach, with the kind of like smoothing out approach, it actually does like a little bit more does a little bit more work for them than that. It actually takes a look at all the other image colors around there, makes a note of their color contrast, makes a note of the differences in contrast, and then it makes the best decision as to like what type of colors it should resize down to, and also for when spanning out too. So like, okay, well, we'll take a note of like what's going around us instead of just looking immediately to our left or right and to our top. And so in order for this technique to work, we need to find the original source image, which is like the huge image you can buy at like stock photo places like iStock Photo. You want to get like the mammoth one that you can get, and so like the one that's really suitable for print design. That's like 300 ppi or whatnot. And then what you do is like go to Photoshop and see that the image here I have right here is like 8.9 megabytes, and then go to JPEG compression, and then slam that sucker down to 0 quality, right? That like goes against everything we've been doing for the last 20 years, right? All right, you're like freaking out, like you're sweating bullets, like what is this guy talking about? But bear with me. And the cool part about this is that one, of course, we just made this ugly-looking JPEG but we had all this file savings right here, 446K versus 8.7 megabytes. So it's like pretty awesome, right? And if we compare that image to all these other like breakpoint images that we had to make, all these stop gaps that we had to do to deliver different size images of different quality to these like for iPhone or for HD TVs or whatever. If you compare that, the file size is actually lower than the one that we do for extra large, like for a Retina display right here, and by a mile. It only loses by going to like the large one pixel here, like for a normal display, and also for the medium. It only loses for these two images right here. But if you compare that to like having to set up all these different images, all those that's like 6 images right there you have to make compared to one. Compare that to doing that. So you have to do all those 6 images for this solution when most of the world does this, right, for the last 20 years. And so there was a study done by Opera engineers, and they actually did a test, and they looked at, I think, 200 to 400,000 websites just to see if their coding is valid. Less than 5% of the websites they looked at were valid code. And if less than 5% people were coding to specs, how many people are going to go do this, right? Actually go through and say like this when there's this option straight in the face that they've been doing forever, right? So most people probably would just think, I'm going to make an HD image, slap it down, and move on with my life because I got other things to do. So that's why one of the reasons why I love extremely compressed JPEGs. So, however, there's a couple of problems. There's a problem with this solution. It's not great for every image. So I'm not sure if you can see it with this projector and this lighting, but there's like banding effects right here in the background. I don't know if you can see that. If you can see that or not. Extremely compressed JPEGs don't really work very well with subtle gradient changes. So from the light blue to the like a little bit darker light blue, you can see little banding effects that wouldn't normally be there. Also, when you're trying to compress images, the browser, will in Photoshop will also try to do its best to like smooth things out. But if there's like hard stop contrast changes, like the sun on her face and the cheekbone right here, it goes to shadow right here, I think she looks like a zombie right here. So this isn't really a great way. Doesn't really show her off very well, like with her face like being like a zombie right here. But so when you have this hard contrast changes, it's not a really great photo for this. So what you want to do is make sure this is a really great solution for photos that have a nice histogram, a nice spread out histogram, nice kind of mount. You don't want to use this technique when your photos are kind of spiky, have spikes and like really wild changes in them. So if you have these type of photos, definitely I would say consider using this method. So, but yeah, any questions so far? I'm like blazing through this. And whatever. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so I really love JPEG, highly compressed JPEGs. What I love to do is do combo moves, right? So what we could do is actually use 2 methods, combine them into one. And so what we're going to do is actually use SVG, and not just SVG, but the ClownCar technique that Estelle Wild talked about at the Smashing magazine. And so what we want to do is set up our SVG. This is just HTML right here. So we just like, hey, this is inline SVG. Hey, I'm going to set all this up right here. I have the title tag, I have an arrow label right here, I have a title right here, and actually within the SVG, I'm going to have style tags, style elements, and then also down here, just for browsers that don't support SVG, for IE, you have a fallback to pings right here. So the fallback for IE for later versions is actually baked into SVG, and then within the style tag, within the style tag, you want to put SVG background size 100% because we want the image to expand to 100%. To have background no repeat. Then you set in your media queries within SVG. Right here. So you say background size. So this is the image that you would say. This is the mobile-friendly version of the image that you would give, right? This is the image that beat out the extremely compressed JPEG that I did before, right? So I'm gonna put that in there first, deliver that, and then for everything else under the sun, I'm going to put medium width, 400 pixels wide, up to like max width. I can actually go like just give it more than that. And if you're great at HD, I really want you to deliver this image. And then the CSS, your media queries, set the image how you want it to be, and then it works. It works like that. It works great. So this is an example of a non-Retina display showing this image, and I could tell that because in the test I had the outline set to green. So this is the image that's set for just normal like desktop, like small scale, normal desktop resolution. It's not Retina or whatever. And you can see there's no banding. There's crispness in the text. There's like smooth gradients right there. Everything's kind of crisp. And this is a Retina version. And Retina, I know it's Retina because I set the CSS to be a red outline right there. And you can see there's banding right here, but it looks great. It's for Retina. It's the content's right there. And then also, and I can just resize it, and it's really awesome. So it works out of the box. So what I love about the combo move is that there's no need for an additional HTTP request, because before, like I said before, the JavaScript solutions beforehand, we would have to go out and deliver by default a mobile-friendly version of the image. And if the browser, if the JavaScript determined like, hey, they're actually on a larger screen or they're on a faster network connection, we can actually like swap out with the Retina version, for example. And so there's actually 2 HTTP requests going out to get 2 images. And so, so this actually goes back to just having 1 request for an image. Also, for this example, you just, at the bare minimum, you can deliver 2 images, one a mobile-friendly version of the image and do a kind of highly compressed JPEG image. And you could be done for the most part. If you want to do better quality, you can do like stop caps for your breakpoint if you want to. Also, there's no JavaScript whatsoever with this solution, right? It's all like, it's all CSS and HTML and your handy-dandy Photoshop. And so what I call this is a flawless victory right there. Do a combo move correctly, do awesome stuff like that. So we talked about speed, we talked about size, we talked about Retina. So there's lots of things that we have to deal with. And like what I said before is like, Opera went out and said that less than 5% of the world is actually doing standards, doing compliance stuff. They're going to just be making a Retina image and stopping it down and into the HTML, and then they're going to move on with their lives. So what I would love to have is actually a simple design for users that the browser and server actually talk to each other and actually like have a really like mature conversation as to what's going on with the speed, the size of the user experience, and that that we have an image file format that's sort of like a storage locker, and that we can say like, as we export to Photoshop, for example, Photoshop will make this huge image, but it will store everything from a thumbnail version of the image to a large like print-ready version of the image, and so what happens is the server can just go out and say, hey, I need a thumbnail. Oh, hey, I need the large version of it. Oh, I need a different version of the image. And I don't care what we call it. We call it our ping or responsive ping. I don't care. Let's have it as long as we can like ask for it and have people build for it. And so hopefully it'll come here one day. But actually, Microsoft actually built this sort of already. Not this Microsoft. This Microsoft. They built it. And actually we use it in our responsive our web designs already. It's called the favicon. So in favicons now, you can use JPEGs, PNGs. You can do almost any image format with favicons. But if you actually use the ICO file, and if you actually have a Mac, you can actually use this, what's called an app. In the App Store, it's called Icon Slate. You can actually store different icon sizes within an .ico file. And so what happens is that if your browser is Retina and supports Retina, it will actually give you the 32 by 32 .ico file. If it doesn't, it will just give you the normal 16 by 16 icon file. And so how easy is that, just to write one tag and say, hey, here's the favicon, do what you need to do to make it work, right? Pretty awesome. If you compare, it's not really an apple-to-apple comparison, but if you were to do a mobile bookmark on your iOS device, like there's a web page you really liked in Safari, you want it on your home screen, and you save it, this is what you need to do to make sure like you have all your iOS bases covered. You have a image, like you have like 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code compared to one .ico file. So you have to do all this extra legwork to make sure your thumbnail icon looks exactly like you want it on all the iOS devices. So I think that's kind of, I know which one I would like to have. So hopefully one day we'll get a responsive image format. Great, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much. Is there any questions or yes, sir? Mm-hmm. Mm. No, sorry. Right. All right, so it's a comment basically to say like there's a Drupal module that'll actually do the resizing of images for you and for the user, right? For not for what? Excuse me. Not for the theme stuff. Okay. Right. And so user uploads it, and then you're relying on the server to deliver the right image at the right time. And does it get processed each time the user hits it? Like, so you get like 10 users, and they have like different devices. So does the server go out and do it? Okay. Image shows. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So you said it caches it each time. So yeah. So definitely that's a solution for users who come to your site and want to you have different retinas and different responsive design images solutions. Cool. Awesome. Question over there? Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's cool. So the comment is that there's icomoon.io has lots of cool features over Fontello that you can actually upload a logo and it will actually make a font and actually have it embedded into your page. So cool. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Question? So one of the things we're worried about is yeah. Mm-hmm. There's no, the questions about is, we talked about media queries, we talked about Retina detecting that, but we talked about network connection speeds. Is there a way to do it like that? So no, like the solution, like the combo move solution, no, there isn't. We don't really address that with the connection speed, and there isn't really anything native other than the Android 2.2 navigator.connection speed that's native. You'd have to, if you're really concerned about that, you have to actually do like a JS test and do that way. So, and with JS test, you can actually you don't have to add an additional 50K weight to it. You can actually, if you have a known quantity like a logo that you're going to use all the time, or an asset that'll never change over time, you actually just do a test on that image, and that way you can save test on that. So, but yeah, so unless anyone else has any ideas about how to do a native speed test, I'm not saying I'm not the only one. But from what I know, there's a native test out there. And some concerns about native testing is that just I started out with the spoofing of the agent, people were concerned about the spoofing of the navigator connection in terms of saying, I'm just like ESPN, I'm so fast, and they're slow as molasses, right? So I just don't know if that's going to be a real issue or not. But I'd rather have it and then have people spoof it and see what happens. But yeah, cool. Any other questions? Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.